Welcome back to Be Well with Dr. Norcott. I'm your host, Dr. Candace Norcott. I'm so glad you're here. Each week, we explore an issue and its implications for the mental well-being of you and your community. Today's no different. A little later in the show, I'll be joined by an amazing guest who will help us take a deeper dive into the how and why our collective psychology may be impacted and how we might reframe the issue to support our collective success and thriving. At the end, I'll leave you with some tips and strategies you can use in your everyday life, tools rooted in the strategies and theories I often use in my own practice. It's important to remember that Be Well is not a replacement for your own therapy, but I hope it can be a conversation starter when your therapist asks, where would you like to begin? Let's start. Today, we're having a conversation that I believe is really important, especially for those of us who've been taught to measure success by survival. This episode is called From Scarcity to Thriving, and we're digging into the stressors and internal conflicts faced by those of us who are the firsts in our families or communities to step into new territory. So whether you're the first generation in the United States, the first to go to college, or even become a professional or pursue therapy, the first even to break patterns of trauma in silence, it can feel like you're living in two worlds. Because when you're a first, you don't just carry the pressure of being successful. You carry the weight of representation, expectations of family, and the unspoken rules about not leaving people behind. And even when you reach the milestones, the degrees, jobs, accolades, the historical memory of scarcity doesn't just vanish. You might still hear that little voice that says, don't get too comfortable, keep grinding, or what if it all goes away? Many of us come from communities that have historically had to operate in survival mode. We've had to hustle, stretch, and sacrifice. Joy? Joy sometimes felt like a luxury, or even worse, selfish. So in today's episode, we're asking, how do we move from scarcity to thriving and give ourselves permission to enjoy the lives we've worked so hard for without guilt or fear? So we're going to unpack how scarcity shapes the way we think, feel, and show up in the world. The emotional labor, the being first, especially in communities of color, and how we can start rewriting the script. We don't want to just succeed, we want to thrive. And my hope after this show today is that you hear that you're allowed to. You're allowed to thrive, experience joy, rest, and not just rest because you've earned it. Next, I'll be joined by a guest who works closely with first-generation folks navigating these exact experiences. Together, we'll explore what it looks like when you honor where you come from while allowing yourself to flourish. And as always, at the end, I'll leave you with a few practical tips to help you shift your mindset and maybe start building a life rooted in abundance and not just guilt. Thriving isn't just about having more. It's about knowing that you're worthy of more, recognizing that your joy is not a betrayal of your roots. In fact, it may be a way to honor them. So take a deep breath in and exhale. On the other side of the break, we'll dig in. You don't want to miss this one. Stay with us.
They say television is about sitting back. We say it's about stepping up. Your block has stories worth telling. Your neighbors have voices worth hearing. Chicago has a heartbeat worth sharing. Stop watching their world. Start showing yours. It's time to tune in and be seen. Can TV, always here, always yours. Experience the power of community television.
Can TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With Can TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on Can TV On Demand.
In each episode's deep dive segment, we slow things down and take a thoughtful look at a specific issue or challenge. with an eye towards reframing how we understand it. It's not just about breaking down the topic, but instead exploring real, actionable ways to shift your perspective, whether that's in your own day-to-day life or in how you relate to someone else's story. So the goal here is connection and clarity. Let's start. To help me with today's deep dive, I'm joined by licensed clinical psychologist, Dr. Shanta Kanukolu. Hi, Shanta.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we met so long ago, so it's just really nice to connect. I think like psychologists, we sometimes see each other on Zoom or at conferences, but we just know about each other's work.
Yes.
And I've just been really impressed by just what you've done and watching both of our journeys kind of in Chicago.
Really amazing. Thank you for including me, thinking of me, and following my journey.
Absolutely. And this topic in particular, I absolutely thought of you because of your practice and when we met, kind of what you were sharing about your mission and really like what you saw as like the work you wanted to be doing. Can we start there? Can you share a little bit about your practice and what drew you to your path, your niche?
Absolutely. So I knew when I went to graduate school that I wanted to focus on mental health in the South Asian community. My parents are immigrants from India. I grew up in a town where it was majority Asian American, many South Asian folks, much like my family. And I noticed there was so much silence about mental health issues, about family conflict, about trauma, about sexual abuse. And so when I pursued psychology, I knew this was an area I wanted to pursue, working within the community. At the time, I found it was absent in a lot of the research, a lot of the books, a lot of the classrooms, the discussions and dialogues in the academic spaces were not including this community. So I went to grad school for that. When I graduated, I found that no one in the community was actually seeking help, though. So where do I go work, right? And so I knew I was in love with working with marginalized communities in general, however. So that's what led me to work in spaces like Cook County Jail, Lake County Probation, the Hines VA Hospital, all areas where I could work with adults who are marginalized, who experience trauma of all forms. But I found over the years there was still this tug, right, this calling. Something wasn't being met. And I realized at the same time I was trying to become a mom, I then had a child, I wanted some flexibility, but I also started seeing people in the community emerging, wanting to talk about topics that they hadn't previously. And so I opened up my doors, my private practice downtown. I now provide services via telehealth, in person, and 80% of my clients are of the South Asian background or are people from communities of color.
Did it surprise you that so many South Asian clients kind of came out and were ready to start?
I was shocked. I felt like I literally put a shingle up and put my little website up, and I wondered, and within a couple of days, people were calling and asking for support. And I think it was just the right time. People were wanting to see someone across the room in the psychotherapy space who looked like them, understood their cultural context, understood their histories, their families' histories. And it's still surprising to me how I'm still here doing this work and the wait lists are long. People are looking for this type of work and this type of care, and I'm immensely grateful I took the leap to do it.
Yeah, the need's there, for sure.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more, because you were referencing kind of the cultural context, and so what are those things when you think about South Asian communities that maybe have been, continue to still be a bit of a barrier to care, or are kind of built into the cultural context that maybe kind of get in the way of when people seeking therapy, or even that come up when they are seeking therapy?
Yeah. I think this theme of survival and that being enough is a big theme, right? And at first it doesn't seem like it because you're working with people who, you know, stereotypically, right? I'm in downtown Chicago, so I stereotypically have people who are in grad school, who are working corporate America, who are lawyers in big firms. So they've checked off all the boxes. It doesn't seem like they're in survival mode per se, right? They've got the house, they've got the kids, they've got the home, they've got the marriage. But when you dig deeper, there's something that is feeling unfulfilling to them. And you realize that they were taught to focus on stability, on safety, in being good citizens and doing the right things and not drawing attention in negative ways. And while that's wonderful in many ways, right, which is a strength of the community stereotypically, what happens is the tough things are put under the rug, right? So depression, marital dissatisfaction, sexual abuse, trauma from family dynamics, intergenerational trauma. And when this goes unspoken, it shows up in the body, in people's moods, in people's decision-making abilities, in their health conditions, right? And breaking the silence is challenging still. Not everyone in the community might be open to talking about topics that feel uncomfortable or feel like they bring a negative reputation to a family, or might make one's family seem like they are not honorable in some way, right, or imperfect in some way.
Thank you for laying it out like that, because in the beginning when you're talking, I'm sure most people are like, what's the problem with that, right? This is what we want. Like we want to, like we want the on paper to look great, right? We've worked really hard. But then it's that when life happens, right? When life lifes, do we have any language or communication style to talk about it, to get through it? Or is it like, that doesn't fit with this mask? And so as you're talking, I'm sure many people who do not identify as South Asian are resonating with, oh, like these are themes that are impacting me too, right?
Yes.
Like that doesn't happen in my family. Well, it did happen in your family, and we have to talk about it. And what's the damage when you don't talk about it?
Right. I had people in my community, my parents' generation or my grandparents' generation, saying, why are you studying this? We don't have those problems. But I know I was in the spaces or in the classrooms or in the college dorms hearing things that they were not. So there was a huge gap, right, in what is being talked about and what is occurring.
Yeah.
And what is being assumed about one's family, right?
And then their families invested in keeping that picture going, right? You're assuming something about my family or about me or my culture, and there's a lot of push to keep those images up.
Right, and even the people going through these hard experiences don't want to hurt their families or sometimes share what's going on with them out of deep gratitude for what their families have done to come to this country, what they gave up, what they sacrificed. So there's a lot of, in psychology we call it parentification, right? There's a lot of, especially older siblings, like holding on this pressure to say, like, I need to protect my family from some of the tough things I'm going through, because they've been through enough. They've had a long, exhausting journey in various ways. They had to miss their family's members' deaths, weddings, right?
That's such a good point, yeah.
And so there's this protective nature in which one generation wants to show compassion for the previous generation by saying, I'll just deal with it myself. But then where are they dealing with it if they're not talking about it with other people?
Right.
Right, so it just occurs over and over again.
That parentification, so basically when children take on the roles and the responsibilities of their parents, that, I think, layering on to that, some children are translating for their parents, going to medical appointments, and so there's the emotional kind of weight of parentification, and then there's like the logistical work of it. Right, actually having to do work like fill out FAFSAs for younger siblings.
Absolutely. If your parents never went to school here, high school, college, any of it, right, or didn't go to school at all, and they're coming here, just getting by and working and maintaining a job and keeping things flowing in the home is a lot of work. And so how are they going to then teach their kids how to then move forward in the U.S. context? That's going to be on the children to learn that, keep their ears out, right? Listen up for what they need to be doing. They don't have the generational wealth or the social capital that their white counterparts have, perhaps.
Yeah, we could say it, right? Like, and but that brings us to a great point, because I think that in this time when I think the push is to be so divisive, when we think about communities of color and how we've been marginalized, there's a lot that's universal about these experiences of firsts. And so, when I was mentioning before about, whether you're first to be in this country or the first to go to college, sometimes there's a lot of overlap in that, like Venn diagram, right, in those overlapping circles.
Yes.
So I think that, whether you're identifying as Black, South Asian, Latino, like there's something that we're talking about, I think, that's going to resonate.
Yes. Yes. I gave a TEDx talk specifically on the topic of surviving to thriving in the South Asian community. And I was surprised that people in the audience were coming up to me afterwards saying, I'm not South Asian, but that totally applies to me. I'm Polish, but that totally hit what you just said. Other people were coming up and saying, I just realized that I've been trying to explain to my partner why I'm scared to take certain risks, or why I'm so anxious about our finances, or why I need a certain amount of money in our bank account. And I never realized it came from these messages I got because I'm the first of fill in the blanks, right? First my family go to school, first to be born here, first to own a home here, whatever it might be.
And so you brought up your two things, and I think that we're heading in the same direction, because your TEDx talk, which I'm like super impressed about because I can barely remember my address anymore. But so your TEDx talk and you know, the thinking about the challenges and how this shows up in people's lives. And so you got some examples.
Right.
You know, as you're kind of building this practice, how did you start thinking about this idea of surviving and thriving as kind of this theme that flowed in and that was relevant in this population and you know, in the work that you're doing? And what are some shifts that you work with your patients to make?
Yeah. So I've noticed in the community outside of therapy, I was hearing this similar theme. And the words used were not scarcity or survival. It was more like, I have a great job, but why am I not happy? Right? Or something's missing, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just tired. Right? There was like, I'm hearing this in the community outside of the therapy room. And then within the therapy room, I'm seeing people come in who are very accomplished, very educated, you know, highly educated, I should say. And they're coming saying that they feel this pressure to do even better in certain settings. Or they felt this pressure to be, because of the first Indian woman, let's say, in a certain space, that they've got to nail it because they can't disappoint the community, right? Or I think of the, you know, 30-something-year-old South Asian male who is feeling this pressure to get married to the right kind of person because he doesn't want to add pressure or stress to his family, but he's struggling to actually do that while maintaining his medical practice, right? And so there's this theme I was seeing in and out of the therapy room, that people had a desire to be more nourished and take more risks or live a different kind of life, but they would go back to saying, oh, but I shouldn't, because I should just be grateful for what I have. I've had people even say to me, you know, I feel like maybe I'm wasting your time. You probably have other patients who have worse problems than me.
I have heard that so many, absolutely.
And it's like, what is that? This idea that you are not enough to get help, that you are not enough to feel more joy, that it's not fair that you're taking a space and someone else doesn't get that space, right? And so I reflected on my own experience alongside theirs and came up with this talk, and I'm grateful that I've been able to do something like that. I think it's reaching a lot of people, and it's offered also some language for people who don't come into the therapy room to now understand what I do in the therapy room. A little psychoeducation, a little example of what therapy could be helpful for, because some people who have never been to therapy don't know what to even go and talk about or why they would go to therapy. They think it has to be for severe mental health issues, right? Or when they're in crisis mode. And so the talk has been helpful to provide some education to start creating maybe some seeds in there to plant.
And because if you're triaging your challenges as it could be worse, how are you ever going to feel confident and embrace coming in and just sharing the things that are burdening you, that are stressing you out? I mean, it's such a overly simplified bucket, sorting bucket, right? Like real problem, my problems. It's like we're allowed to struggle. And so I'll tell you, I absolutely cannot stand the term first world problems.
Oh my gosh.
I cannot. When I hear it, like makes this, like the hairs on the back of my neck. Because yes, you can acknowledge privilege and you can acknowledge and be in a posture of gratitude and talk about the things that are challenging to you in your life. So all of that is just like resonating. I'm glad I have a sister in hating that term. Let's spread the word.
Oh my gosh.
Every time I'm like, no, like just say the thing that you were struggling with. It's okay.
And so many times I have to pause people in therapy. Hold on. You don't need to say something and then like knock it down real quick, right? You can actually just own that you're struggling with something. And maybe you don't love that you're struggling with it, but let's take a look at that.
Yeah, it's different. That's different, right? You might not want to, but you are. It's on your mind. It's challenging you.
I'm so glad you said the word "and." By the way, that was a big piece of my work recently. You know, you can be privileged and struggle with whatever's going on. You can love your parents and respect them and be grateful for them, and want something different for yourself.
Yes.
You're not discounting them or disrespecting them if you want your life to look a little different than theirs. If you want your career to be something that's not as safe as maybe what they hoped it would be. Or you might love them and say, I'm going to take some risks that you were not allowed to take, and you didn't have the chance to take, but I'm going to do it because you gave me the space to do that, right?
And we're in Chicago, the city of improv, right? Like improv comedy, and their main thing is yes and.
That's right.
So, I mean, I work it into the therapy all the time, so absolutely.
I like that.
So I want to kind of make sure we have a little time to just share, you know, what are some beginning ways that you kind of plant seeds for your clients, your patients, to have them start shifting towards this idea of moving away from scarcity, from surviving to flourishing and thriving in their lives?
Well, first, I will say I try to prioritize having a decolonized lens in therapy and a feminist lens in therapy, right? Which means I want to center their cultural experience, their history, their cultural identity, their family's identity, right? Because we can't ask people to just snap into a certain mindset without understanding why they feel guilt for doing so, or why they might struggle to do so, or why they don't have the language to do that, right?
But you're not just going to come and say, don't do that.
Right.
Right, without understanding the
And
why.
having some toxic positivity, like just, you know, move forward, it'll be fine, or pray on it, or, you know, that doesn't do it for people. We need to understand, oh, why does it seem so hard? Why are you struggling with it? Why is it in the fabric of your day-to-day thinking? Why is it in your self-talk? Oh, there's a history behind this, right? The messages you're getting from all around you are to stay small, stay safe, be stable, right? And so I think we first unpack that piece, and I want to honor that piece. And then from there, we discover, okay, we see where you're coming from, but where do you want to be? What are your values versus your family's values? And most of the time, people haven't thought of that. They think about values generically, like I should be a good person, I should be kind, I should be compassionate.
I've done so much value work recently. I love that. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. Digging deep into it, like every other year I'm finding right now, because we evolve, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so having people determine what is their voice, what are their values, and then from there, what feels exciting, what feels nourishing, what feels fulfilling, right? Because survival is living day to day. Thriving is saying, I want to live day to day and feel excited, energized, nourished, and embrace something that feels satisfying to me.
We need to end it there because I feel energized. I feel excited in this conversation with you. So it's taken us to a perfect place. And so I'm so glad that you joined me today.
Me too.
And I just hope that people really can, you know, what we're talking about resonates with them, because people deserve to have a life that they are excited about.
Always.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
On the other side of a short break, we'll close out the episode with a segment we call the closing session. Stay with us.
I'm Andy Zopp, the host of Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Every week, we gather for insightful conversations with local journalists and community leaders as we discuss the news of the day and how it impacts the lives of Chicagoans. Join the conversation on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app. Hyperlocal news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
For more than 40 years, CAN TV has been Chicago's voice, your voice. We've shared your stories, amplified your concerns, and celebrated your triumphs. Now we want to hear from you. What programs matter most? What issues should we cover? How can we better serve your community? Visit cantv.org/feedback today. CAN TV. Experience the power of community television.
I'm so grateful to my friend and colleague Shanta for joining me today. With the world seemingly on fire, I'm hopeful about the ways communities of color can show up for each other. At the end of every episode, I extend an invitation to you, and that's what I'm going to do now, to invite you to reflect on your readiness for change. Maybe you're ready to make a shift in your life and just need that help taking the first step. If that's you, I'll share some ideas and practices to try, because I know that for so many of us, whether you're a first-generation college student, the first in your family to build a professional career, or the firstborn in a new country, this journey's personal, layered, powerful, and sometimes it's heavy. When survival's been the goal for so long, it can feel almost foreign, uncomfortable to believe that you're allowed to thrive, that you're allowed to experience joy, not just because you've earned it, but simply because you're worthy of it. So before we wrap up, a moment of reflection. Ask yourself, where in your life are you still operating from scarcity? Where do you find yourself bracing for loss rather than open to abundance? Maybe it's around money, relationships, your own time and energy. And then I invite you to think about what it would look like to shift, even just a little, towards thriving. What's one small thing you could do this week to honor the life you're building instead of just surviving it? Maybe that means setting a boundary that you've been worried about setting. Maybe it means allowing yourself to rest without feeling guilty or you need to really earn it. Maybe it even means celebrating a win instead of rushing to the next task. There's not going to be a right answer here, just honest, compassionate reflection. You are not being ungrateful when you choose to thrive. You're not dishonoring your family, history, or culture by embracing joy. Maybe, just maybe, you're honoring their sacrifices by living fully. That's our time for this week. If anything resonated with you today, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Join me on our show page for resources and to share what we talked about, what resonated with you, as you follow along with us through these important conversations. Keep reflecting, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep the dialogue going, whether with us, your friends, or within your own community. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into a topic that matters. Until then, take care, stay curious, and be well together.